surveillance cameras, subliminal messages in advertising, microchip implants directing our behavior. Welcome to the wired world.
Whenever you activate an internet connection, whenever you pick up the telephone, whenever you use your mobile, use your bank machine, these are all instances where a surveillance mechanism will be engaged.
There was a voice saying to me one morning, "Good morning, Kathy," and woke me up. That's nothing that I created. This is external. It sounds electronic.
Once you get into this and you realize the magnitude of which we are being constantly induced into various kinds of behavior, value systems and so forth, this runs the show.
With the acceleration in the growth of technology, the fear has grown that we have become slaves to the wired world. Conspiracy theorists believe this technological change is a direct threat to personal privacy and freedom.
As we've engaged digital technology, as we've introduced it into more and more aspects of our lives, we've increased the opportunity for surveillance. There's more opportunity now for government agencies, private sector bodies to work together to engineer privacy into extinction.
And now, before the next show starts, let's enjoy an intermission. You'll find our snack bar chock full of good things to eat and drink. Tasty, tempting hot dogs.
There's nothing new in using technology to influence people's behavior. But the crudest form of this took place in the 1950s with experiments that encoded subliminal messages into advertisements.
Subliminal messages are things we perceive at a non-conscious, non-cognitive level. We've learned how to use this in order to sell people, to train people, to educate, to reorient, to provide ideology. We use it for everything. It's a moneymaker, and it's extremely successful.
The classic subliminal experiment took place in a New Jersey cinema in 1957. To see if audiences responded to subliminal commands, technicians flashed up simple messages during the movies. The messages read, "Eat popcorn, drink Coke." The story goes that sales of popcorn and Coke increased dramatically.
Good morning, everybody. Hey.
In the year 2000 US presidential campaign, the Republican Party was forced to drop a TV ad attacking Democrat nominee Al Gore. In it, the word rats had flashed up for an instant.
The Bush prescription plan, seniors choose.
Once the story broke, presidential candidate George W. Bush distanced himself from the technique.
First I've heard of it is sitting here this morning. Campaigns take bizarre twists. This has got to be one of the more bizarre accusations. We don't need to be, as far as I'm concerned, our campaign, or the Republican, in this case, National Committee, doesn't need to be manufacturing, kind of subliminal message to get my message out.
But there is a darker side to subliminal persuasion. If true, it would seem to support the idea that technology is being used to control us. Across Europe and North America, reports on the internet claim that people have been subjected to audible subliminal messages. They hear voices or sounds in their heads telling them to carry out certain acts. Those that hear these sounds claim they are sent by the perps, a shadowy authority intent on controlling their lives. Dr. Arman Victorian has studied many cases of what is known as remote mind control.
They can program an individual to carry out certain acts in such a way that that person would think that what he or she is doing is the result of his or her own processes of mind. In recent years, they have been able to identify and isolate signatures in human emotions: fear, paranoia, despair, agony, anxiety, anger.
Conspiracy theorists believe the perps use microwaves, radio frequencies, and in some cases holograms. And there is some evidence to support this. In 1977, the CIA admitted it had carried out mind control experiments during the 50s and 60s, under the code name MK Ultra. Since going public, the CIA claims to have stopped all experiments. Yet recent testimony from the public seems to suggest that mind control is still being practiced.
I had been meditating for a long period of my life, so I felt like I really got to know myself, and I pretty much knew my own thoughts. And there seemed to be this overlay of somebody else trying to change my thought. There was a voice saying to me one morning, "Good morning, Kathy," and woke me up. And it sounded like it was, it sounds metallic. But they don't use that anymore. That's old style anyway. But it woke me up, and I thought, no, that's not my voice. That's nothing that I created. This is external. It sounds electronic, so I'm not going crazy.
Sufferers claim these simple commands quickly escalate into noises that prevent them from sleeping, working, or living a normal life.
The brain can't even hear it. You have no way of controlling that. It's completely out of your control. That's what's so sinister about this. You will have no more control over what you're thinking, or what you're doing, or where you're going.
Victims of mind control have pleaded with the authorities to investigate their cases, but they've been dismissed because there's a plausible explanation for the voices.
Auditory hallucinations are far more common than people actually realise. If we're talking about the odd occasion where you think you hear someone calling your name, or you think you hear an isolated word or two, if you think, on the other hand, that you are getting long messages giving you complex instructions, then seek psychiatric help.
Scientists have long experimented with the idea of humans fusing with technology. Early experiments used microchips as a means of relaying messages to the human brain. Conspiracy theorists believe that when inserted under the skin, the chips can be used to track people and even influence their thoughts. In 1998, Professor Kevin Warwick from Reading University performed an experiment to test the effectiveness of human implants. He had a microchip implanted into his left arm. The chip then sent messages to computers.
The computer could track my movements around the building here at Reading, so as I came through the front door, it knew it was me because of the implant. It switched on the light, said hello, and so on.
Impressive enough, but it's a big leap from tracking people to changing the way they think and behave.
To my knowledge, in humans, the technology is still fairly limited. There is quite a bit of work helping humans move around again for medical purposes, but in terms of implants for tracking people or even controlling people, my own feeling is we're a few years off yet it actually being used in practice.
But not everyone's convinced.
The technology is there if they want to do that. That person could be easily programmed into a satellite, and satellite can do the job of the tracking through the computers.
The sort of power that you need in order to change people's thoughts would seem to be extreme. You'd need an enormous microwave transmitter that is probably as big as the UK. I think it would be very, very difficult for such implants to go undetected.
But there are easier ways to keep track of people. In every high street, shopping mall and station, CCTV is watching what's going on. Protection for some, proof that Big Brother is watching, according to conspiracy theorists.
We have to understand that the idea that this friendly eye in the sky is looking after our interests is a hoax. Closed-circuit television has not been established for crime control. It's been established for societal management. The other way of looking at it is saying, let's look at the entire population and then work backwards so that we can eliminate those who are within the bell curve of normality and end up with a reduced number who should be placed under suspicion. So this second approach is now being used by agencies all over the world. Mass surveillance reducing to a series of targets. That's what privacy advocates call a nightmare.
At least you can see these cameras. For conspiracy theorists, hidden surveillance is far more worrying. In 1995, 1% of the population of the UK logged onto the internet. In less than 5 years, that figure rose to 30%. Many believe this source of information is changing the way we live.
The future is information, because what's happening is our culture is being taken over by evolving information organisms. People are spending more and more of their time processing information, taking it in, passing it on, and it's almost as if it's another wave of evolution.
And whoever controls that front door to the wired world, whoever controls the portal into cyberspace in any measurable way, will have tremendous advantage in determining where people go, what they buy, what they see, and how they benefit in the future.
We communicate online, bank online, shop online, book holidays online, even satisfy sexual needs online. But what happens to the information traces we leave on the net?
New research shows that many people still don't think the internet is a safe place to shop.
Barclays Bank has this evening reopened its internet banking service after a serious security problem.
Now the latest safety scare about bank accounts on the internet.
The problem today is that we are in danger of sacrificing personal privacies to gain the most advantage from the world of the internet.
It's probably fair to say that 10, 15 years ago, it was impractical for agencies to place the population at large under surveillance. That certainly isn't the case now.
When you visit most internet sites, it's more than likely that something called a cookie will be deposited on your PC. That's a quick and easy way of identifying who you are, where you come from. The disadvantages are that it actually leaves a trail as you go through websites. And so that's perhaps where the danger lies, in that you have no option in being able to say, hey, I don't want the world to be able to track me through the internet.
Conspiracy theorists believe this was the intention of information technology companies all along.
There's no doubt that all of the large multinationals in the IT sector were complicit in arranging to weaken the security of their products. Much has been said about the covert activities of large organizations such as Microsoft. And it's certainly true that those organizations have tended to be very sympathetic to the views of surveillance authorities.
In 1998, Microsoft developed an operating system with internet access built into it. When new users typed in their details to register, the company was allegedly able to keep tabs of what the people then did on their computers.
There was a big flap about the registration wizard sending information like what the configuration of your computer was, and the big one was what other programs you're running on your computer. I can definitely see why people get upset about that, and Microsoft certainly shouldn't have done it without people's permission. But the reasons for things like that is just some technical group was assigned to write this thing and didn't think about the consequences.
This seemingly innocent explanation doesn't satisfy everyone.
There is a sense that as we see the internet evolve, as we see it mature, that there are more and more layers of control over the content of that medium. And there's no question that large institutions are doing everything in their power to create controls, because once you've established controls, you have established a market base for the development of products and services. You have also established the ability to place under surveillance a vast range of activities of tremendous value to the authorities.
So the conspiracy theorist's view is that the internet is a carefully orchestrated surveillance device. One of the ways of maintaining this in the future is through so-called walled gardens. Rather than have an open network, users will have to go through service providers like AOL and Microsoft, who may apply their own conditions and restrictions. The danger is that once service providers control access to information, they can just as easily censor it.
I think that for every garden wall that's built, a week or two later, someone's found a way to vault over that wall. It's really an arms race in technology and on the internet, and it's very, very difficult to keep information away.
The key points to pull out of the internet debate is that the internet must remain in future a neutral network. It can't be dominated by any single commercial or government interest, and that personal privacy over the internet must be protected.
It's a non-issue. What companies are interested in doing is stuffing ads in your face, not keeping you from seeing things. Anything you want to see, that's fine. They'll just put an ad on their page. That's the way America works.
But it's not only the internet where you can be tracked.
10 years ago it was conventional wiretapping. It was the use of databases connected to identity cards. These days it tends to be far more integrated technologies.
Every time you use a mobile phone, send an email, use a cash or credit card, or even enter a building with an electronic pass, you leave traces. As with the internet, that information can be stored and used against you at a later date.
Well, big brother, big sister, anybody who wants to dig all those records of the videotapes you rented back in, in the early 90s when you were having a bachelor party, you run for president, 20, 30 years later, someone digs that up and, there it is.
Now, effectively, what is going to happen is the government will have fairly significantly increased powers to hook into the network, and having hooked into the network can interpret virtually everything you put through, whether it's internet communications, voice communications, whatever.
Recently, the FBI was forced to go public about its interception system, Carnivore. The system analyzes and digests the contents of tens of thousands of American emails and phone calls from public and private domains. In the year 2000, the British government made it legal for security services and private companies to intercept communications in much the same way.
We have asked the authorities time and time again, the world over, to quantify their claim that they need these new powers. And no matter which agency we go to, we are confronted with the same response, which is, this is a state secret. We can't tell you what we know. Take us on trust, we need these powers.
The Home Office denies there is anything sinister in the new law. It says that due to the significant rise in cybercrime, the government needs new powers to be one step ahead of cybercriminals. But of course, the law allows surveillance of innocent citizens as well.
Have you ever had a sneaking feeling that Big Brother may be spying on you at work? You may be right, it can happen. The 1 o'clock news has found evidence of firms using hidden cameras to secretly monitor their staff.
According to a recent study by the American Management Association, 3/4 of the USA's largest corporations check on their employees. Together with CCTV, they monitor emails, the net surfing habits of employees, and even telephone conversations.
The public isn't aware of these covert methods of surveillance. Certainly when you discuss the issues with a group of people, and you can actually get through the nothing to hide, nothing to fear defense, people start to worry.
And employees generally do not think about the fact that the company has every right to monitor their private emails. I don't like that, but if I were employed at a company, I would definitely want to have a separate email address for my private emails, because who knows who doesn't like you 20 years from now and this stuff is saved forever.
Inappropriate use of email, telephone and the internet costs each medium-sized company £1 million a year. Little wonder employers feel justified in keeping tabs on their workers.
If all the people in your company are connected to the web, in the same way that people are connected to the telephone, this service is likely to be abused. And report after report and survey after survey has come out showing that company use of the internet in an unauthorized manner is starting to increase, and that is also a waste of productivity.
In 1948, George Orwell wrote a foreboding portrait of the future. There was no way of knowing whether you were being watched, and you had to live with the assumption that every sound was heard and every movement scrutinized. So, 50 years later, has his vision finally come true? Conspiracy theorists think so. But instead of one big brother, a network of large corporations play the same all-seeing role. The power doesn't lie in the technology, it's what these corporations do with it.
If there's a conspiracy, then it's a conspiracy to give consumers technology for free that they used to have to pay a lot of money for.
We're selling technology in the United States much the same way we're selling cigarettes, underarm deodorants, and toothpaste. We're building people's confidence on it because it's merchandisable.
The software is getting cheaper and cheaper if you consider all the features you're getting. I mean, clearly, what's the conspiracy and who's it hurting?
As we become more and more dependent upon technology, they will make us more and more dependent.
Now, as we give more of ourselves over to these technologies, we create a digital persona. That digital persona may as well be public because of the sheer number of agencies which have access to that.
Whatever sounds to a member of the public as science fiction, it is not science fiction. A lot of it could be a sheer reality.
The notion that eventually we'll end up in a situation where there is such a degree of control over our individual liberties is one that should be taken seriously, because the technology is moving in the direction where it would become possible that this could actually become reality.
It's no longer just in the street, on station platforms or at work where we're being watched. It's now sitting in the corner of our living rooms. As technologies converge through the same black box, who is now watching who?